So I got a message on Twitter this morning from Jeff Lauder, otherwise known as Secular Outpost, well-known atheist online, and I would certainly consider a friend of mine. And he let me know about a mutual acquaintance of ours, Steve Hayes, that about a diagnosis he'd had, and his message was rather cryptic. So I went to try a blog, the website that I believe Hayes founded, the blog that he founded, and saw here that Steve Hayes passed away. So I wanted to offer some thoughts on Steve Hayes. So this is often when people pass away, you give a eulogy, which is a good word, and eulogos. I don't have, unfortunately, a good word to say about Steve Hayes, but I just do want to offer a reflection. So I became aware of Steve Hayes about a decade ago when he began. I think it was when I was still blogging for the Christian Post, which is in 2009, 2010. And Steve Hayes, well-known conservative Calvinist blogger, and I guess he said them. I said some things he didn't like, and fixated on me, and began criticizing me. So that began. Do you call that a relationship? Where he would repeatedly over the years post things to criticize whatever I had said. And then he began following me on Twitter, and I saw that he had post responses to my tweets. I searched this morning on Triablog and saw that my name came up with 228 hits. So that's a lot of times. I think it's mostly Steve that has responded to me. In the early years, I would respond back to Triablog, and I would respond in such a way that I would attempt to have a dialogue, a friendly debate, perhaps. Here are some of the titles of the articles that Steve Hayes wrote about me. Randall Rouser is a fool, and Rouser's forked tongue. And Hayes took to calling me apostate Randall Rouser at some point, and also escalated probably around 2012 or 13 to such a point that Steve Hayes, I believe he lives in the Seattle area, somewhere in the United States anyway. But it came to such a point where he became determined to try to get me to lose my job. So I actually got a call from the president of Taylor Seminary where I teach. He wanted to meet with me and said, "Yeah, I got this message from this guy named Steve Hayes saying that you need to be fired," or something to that effect. And I got a message likewise from the interim pastor at my church at the time, wonderful guy, uh, Brian. And Brian says similar. He says, "Yeah, this guy from the United States wants you to be disciplined by the church." I'm not sure what he's talking about. So in each case, I gave them some of the backstory, and they said, "Oh, okay," and that was it. Right? They kind of left it at that. They saw that this was a person. Um, I won't say anything more. I'll just say that a person who had concerns they did not share. And there was a time when I tried to interact. I remember one moment when I tried to interact with Steve on the comments on his website, and I said something to the effect of, "Steve, I'm really not that bad a person. Like, come on, man." And I just got this cold, angry reply that he wanted to destroy me, basically, was the impression I got. And I remember that kind of exchange in my life one time before. The year was probably 1989, maybe, or 1988. Uh, it was summertime, and I was in a town called Penticton, British Columbia, near Kelowna, where I grew up. And it was probably in the middle of the night, around midnight. And I was with some friends in the city park there. And then we got confronted by some headbangers. If you remember what headbangers are, guys who listen to heavy metal, long hair, wear tight jeans and high tops or cowboy boots and try to look tough. And I tried to reason with the headbangers, and I just got this cold stare of hatred back right before they started putting boots in my head. And that was a similar sort of vibe I got online from Steve Hayes, that he wanted to destroy me. And I felt bad for him. I can honestly say that I've never hated Steve Hayes. but I know he hated me. He did not want me. He would. I have no doubt that he would probably pray imprecatory psalms against me, and I think that that's tragic. I think that that's sad, and I think it's. Let me offer some comments on his actual, very strikingly brief statement here from Triablog. You can read it there. Steve Hayes, of course, was a Calvinist, and the statement here, it says here, it's like 3 short paragraphs. Doesn't really tell you much. It does tell you about his diagnosis and tells you that he refused treatment for the heart disease and cancer, I believe it was. But it doesn't really tell you why. It just says that he consistently lived his life. I think it's an allusion to providence. But overall, the impression I get from this eulogy is that it exhibits the humility of John Calvin. John Calvin famously was buried in an unmarked grave at his own request because he didn't want people traveling to Geneva on some sort of mission to, like, a holy pilgrimage, turning his gravesite into a place of pilgrimage and turning him into a saint. And I think that kind of humility was the kind of humility that Steve Hayes wanted to exhibit as he exited the world. And I think that's a noble thing. So I don't know what Steve Hayes even looks like. He kept a very low profile so far as I can see online, and I certainly didn't creep him online or try to find out more information about him once I discovered, yeah, this guy actually wants to destroy me. Then I kind of just went my separate ways and didn't interact with him anymore. Although I saw him, I would get notations from Google when there are new posts about you, and I would see, oh, okay, Steve is posting about me again fairly regularly, even this year. Um, Although, in fairness, I don't know that every one of those posts was from Steve. Uh, there may have been some that were from other people at Triablog. Either way, I guess I will say the good word that I will say is that, yeah, I do respect Steve's humility, that he lived consistently, I guess, with his theological convictions about providence. But I also think that he was a very angry person who lived off of and drew energy off of his hatred of others and his desire to destroy other people. And I think that's very unhealthy. And I think it's unfortunate that it ended that way. And my heart goes out to those who grieve in his absence.